Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 4, Episode 7, Quickie, Nirvana, written by David Chase and directed by Meta Rosenberg. The episode begins with the vision of a pyramid in the sand, before a woman emerges from this pyramid/cargo box and makes her way to Jim's trailer. The woman, Sky, is known to Jim and wants to use his phone. She's harmless, if a little annoying, but for some reason is being watched by two goons.
This chick done contacted a private investigator.
The goons follow Jim and confront him about Sky, or as they know her, Jane. And Jim takes umbrage at them getting a little handsy. So, after getting rid of them, he heads to Sky's ashram, only to find that there she's known as Gopi, and was thrown out for lying about her age.
She tells everyone that she's in her early 30s, but she's really 40.
She certainly has accumulated a lot of trouble and aliases for a free spirit. Jim is pointed in the right direction to a spiritual retreat, but his car breaks down on the way and he has to get a lift. He finds Sky at the retreat and is getting a bit fed up with her laid-back attitude when he explains what happened to him and how the goons got onto him.
You want to see negativity? I'll show you negativity.
And she has no other explanation other than it being about some papers she failed to deliver for the law firm she worked at just before she went on her spiritual journey. When they check the envelope she was given, they discover the papers are government papers. Green ones with pictures of the presidents on them. $30,000 worth. This episode is a bit of a slow burn, as it spends a lot of time setting up and often mocking the New Age lifestyle that Sky has chosen, with only a little bit of time spent setting up the mystery element. While some could see this as being very dismissive of a spiritual or hippie lifestyle, I don't think that's the intention. Yes, Jim does come from a straight-laced world, but he's also been shown to be very progressive when it comes to lifestyles other than his own. Particularly as his own is a little off the house and wife in the suburbs with the station wagon and the white picket fence ideal of his generation. What it suggests to me is that he sees through the facade of the pick and mix of various Eastern religions, modern science and self-delusion, and has lost all tolerance when people with guns are on his case. This is demonstrated in the next scene, where Sky thinks it's karma that has brought the money to her, not the fact that she basically stole it by not doing what she was asked to do with it. And Jim has the perfect response.
Forget the karma and get in a car.
The next day, Jim has the money sent back to Sky's old boss, Alan Bayliss, and is done with Sky. Or so he thinks, as the goons arrive at the trailer, claiming the envelope was filled with newspapers.
I had nothing to do with this. Somebody switched the envelopes.
He ditches them for the second time and finds out that despite him telling Sky to keep quiet about the money, she obviously told her guru, Gordon, who just so happens to have gone to India to study with a holy man. Jim tracks Dennis down, who is working undercover on a sting operation, but he is naturally reluctant to help, forcing Jim to go to Chapman, who is convinced by Bayliss's legit front. It does give Jim a hint as to what's really going on, though.
There's Maceo Prentice, the Duke of Soul.
He's a client, Mr. Rockford.
I did read, though, where he was having some kind of legal problem.
Lawyer Bayliss was attempting to pay off a witness on behalf of his client, who purposely killed a guy with his car and would have gotten away with it as an accident without said witness. The goons belong to Bayliss's client, Mace Prentice, who now wants to kill the witness as the payoff failed. After a slow start, the episode now has a little meat on its bones, as we know what this mess is all about and who the major players are, even if Jim doesn't. He tracks down the witness, but Prentice has beaten him to it and faked a suicide by hanging, which brings Sky back down to earth with a bump. But Chapman buys into the suicide setup because he's 10 times the square that Jim is, and it fits perfectly into his worldview of alternative lifestyles and hippies.
He's a suicide. The man's hands weren't even tied, not a sign of a struggle.
This is really effective storytelling, having Chapman happy to believe that anyone with an alternative lifestyle is a degenerate, while Jim, who maintains his reservations about it, is still able to see the truth. Chapman believes the lawyer in the expensive suit, thinks the dropout killed himself, and thinks Jim is full of baloney, purely based on their varying social statuses. Whereas Jim knows liars and con artists come in all different shapes and sizes, and his experience allows him the edge when it comes to spotting them. This comes to a head when Jim confronts Skye about her choices and calls her out for deluding herself. And, while not quite telling her to give up the hippie lifestyle and get a job, he comes as close as he could.
Your alternative lifestyle comes out of somebody else's pocket.
I feel like this scene goes on a little too long and is perhaps a little too strong a dressing down for Jim to give to Skye, as he's dealt with far worse people far more calmly. She hasn't brought him nearly as much trouble as Angel ever did, and while most of what he says I don't necessarily disagree with, I feel like it could have been delivered in a way more measured way, encouraging her to find her own purpose rather than telling her off for being an easily led bum. Particularly as we know that she's only recently left gainful employment. And especially as the result of all this is for her to find out that Gordon is still in the US, and for her to tell Jim where she thinks he might have gone.
La Cuesta, it's this plastic beach and tennis club near San Diego, you know?
Jim gets the money back and makes a deal with Bayliss to give it back to him, which Prentice wants to use as an opportunity to kill Jim and Skye. Jim is naturally prepared for this and arranges for the setup to take place at where Dennis's undercover sting operation is going on, getting everyone arrested. A few months later, Jim runs into Skye, now going by Hester, as she has abandoned her hippie lifestyle to preach the gospel according to a crooked televangelist. Which is a funny button, showing just how much Skye needs to be led regardless of who's doing the leading, but also enforces the point that there are crooks and conmen in all walks of life, who all use their marks in roughly the same way, to extract wealth from the vulnerable. The episode itself is not a bad little mystery, with some fun to be had, although it's not quite up to par with the rest of the season so far. I feel like it spends a little too much time on critiquing hippie culture specifically, without really delving into the larger theme of how anyone can be exploited or conned, which is what really lies behind the critique. Skye is a bit too much of a punching bag and doesn't quite warrant it. And the real crooks, the lawyer, his client, the guru, and even the televangelist, are sort of peripheral and spared any real wrath. It's well-intentioned but never quite hits the target for me, so this is a 3 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.